We want to acknowledge the peoples of the three fires, the Ojibwa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples, on whose land we live and work. The Three Fires people are indigenous to this land. We acknowledge our physical location is built on stolen native land. We are therefore guests on this land. We acknowledge the histories and traditions of the people who originate here first and who are still here. We make this land acknowledgement as an important first step. The Greater Grand Rapids Area Citizens Climate Lobby knows that we need to always engage in the important work of social justice by taking continual steps to learn, honor indigenous individuals and groups, and honor the land where we do our work.
Thank you, Chuck, for doing that. Okay, first thing that we always try to point out, especially to if you're new or visiting, Citizens Climate Lobby is national and international, and our focuses are carbon pricing, so putting a price on carbon, and clean energy permitting reform, electrification, and healthy forests. And if you would like more information on this, you go to the actual national site, which is citizensclimatelobby.org, and there's full explanation on the tabs on the first homepage of each of these. Our chapter's organization is made up of a number of, I think, 11 committees and 5 teams, and this is the beginning of it. And there are people who are ahead of these teams and committees. I'm going to have you speak up if you have something to report, and otherwise, I'm just go through the list. The federal, so the first, we'll start with first team is lobby, and the federal division of that is led by Kelly, Patty, and Tori. For the third district, and our U.S. representative is Hillier Scoten. Kelly, I saw you on, and Patty. Any comments you want to make?
Yeah, I'll just comment quickly, just since we haven't met in this setting since our fall lobby meeting. So we met with Representative Scoten's environmental aide in November, and had a conversation primarily around permitting reform. Always an engaging conversation with her office and her staff. So that was good. We had some follow-ups, and we tend to try to meet with them or have some touch points about quarterly. So I expect maybe March, April timeframe to be our next lobby activity.
Okay, good. John, or most likely Rebecca, do you want to make a comment about the state and local and your next meeting coming up?
Yeah, just real quickly, the next meeting coming up is on Wednesday, January 28th, and I need a final confirmation from Nancy Morales, but I'm pretty sure that she's going to be able to attend that meeting. And it's where we're going to kick off 2026, get information from Nancy on Kent County projects that are their priorities, and see where CCL wants to prioritize from that list and focus our time. So please come.
And it's at the say the word.
Plainfield Public Library.
Okay, at 6 o'clock.
Yep, in the biggest room there. Yep.
Okay, good. And the next one under lobby is CAP, which is Climate Action Program that Rebecca and Chuck run. And I'm going to have you guys wait until you do your screens to make announcements on that part, okay?
Great.
Okay. Grassroots team is made up of, you can see there, 5 committees. Tableman Committee, Kathy just sent me an email. She's is dealing with her father going into the hospital and taking care of her mother over in Grand Haven, so she couldn't be here tonight. She did report on Sunday about what's happening in the tabling and some of the changes that they're trying to make in the future events coming up and us being present. Why it's going to be important, particularly this year. If you all were there on Sunday, remember that she talked about we need to get the vote out, and it's important and doing that part of it. And so tabling committee sees that as definitely their mission in being present in some of these events. So EGA committee, David, you're cooking. Can you take a break?
Yes. I just want to report that we had wonderful response at our strategic meeting. I've got lots of new people signed up that weren't involved with EJ before, and we have some exciting ideas that we're going to discuss on February 4th. I'm hoping that we can organize a joint artistic collaboration between white people and BIPOC people, pairing them up somehow so that they can work together on projects and then present them to each other. That's an exciting idea that I've talked with Nancy Morales, and I'm hoping that we can organize that at our next meeting on February 4th.
Okay, so don't go away. I'm just going to skip over activation right now because we don't have any, that's interconnected to the Welcome Committee. And we don't have anything scheduled on that. And David and I work on that along with some other people. But we're going to move right into pocket forests and native plantings. And I'm not sure if Amy's on board or I would have Amy talk, but would you like to do that part of it?
Yeah,
Too? Are you there?
I did talk with Amy. Amy and I are now kind of hand in hand in this. I got her up to speed about what we're doing or hoping to do with property that I have that has been cleared by Consumers Energy, and we have a large swath of land that is waiting to be planted as a native meadow if we can figure out how to do it. I've established a Google Doc that is documenting every step that we take to get from where it is now to where we want it to be in some years' time. And I just got something from Chad. Is Chad with us tonight?
Chad was actually coming down with a bug and he elected, he said he was sorry that he couldn't be with us tonight.
Well, I'm very excited. Chad is helping with data management with that project. And we're going to need that. And I think there are other people also. Kat Ban is another person who's very competent, and Chuck, of course. So I'm hoping that at this next meeting, which is January 22nd at 12:30 at my house to look at the site, anybody that wants to come, please contact me and I'll tell you how to get here and we can have a nice conversation.
Okay, great. Sounds kind of exciting. I have an actual place and we all like coming to your house, David.
I like having you.
Okay, West Michigan Environmental Hub. Kelly, do you want to report on behalf of David so we can hear somebody else's voice?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. Although David has kind of taken next steps on. So we have a meeting scheduled for Sunday, January 25th at 2 p.m. at David's house. And this is with some of the folks who have recently expressed interest in being involved. So I think we'll talk a little bit about integrating them possibly into the current monitoring schedule and responsibilities. And then also some of the opportunities for continuing to enhance the Enviro Hub kind of into a more website-based space, and then just some other opportunities that brings with maybe bringing together other resources and information. So
Okay.
feel free to reach out if anyone is interested in that. That's also at David's house.
And for John is monitoring our links, and the links should be in the chat for you to be able to access it. And so the Enviro Hub link is in there, I believe, in the chat. It is always in our newsletter, so people can have access that way too. So in fact, Kelly, why don't you get just a really quick explanation about the Enviro Hub? We have a few people newer on that just may not know the function.
Yeah, happy to. So the Enviro Hub was something we created in spring of last year, and it essentially is just a Google Calendar where a team of volunteers kind of bring together events that are all environmental related, but hosted by all kinds of organizations. And it is primarily focused on the Michigan 3 congressional district, so West Michigan Representative Hillary Scholten's kind of area. And I say that's kind of roughly, so sometimes things in Lansing will go on that, but it's a calendar where we bring all of those events and all of the details on it onto that calendar so you can see anything that's happening in the environmental space in one place.
Okay, thank you. Grass Tops is one of the 5 teams, and Steve Ashmead and I kind of co-lead that. Our next meeting, we meet only quarterly, and so our next meeting isn't until May 4th at 11:30 a.m. If you are interested in attending that and interested in just observing, what does this team do? And we say building collaborative relations with community leaders, but what does that mean and how we represent different areas? Please put your name in the chat and say, I'm interested. I would like to be on the list for notification for that meeting. It's Zoom, of course. I should say not course. It's Zoom. And it's because we bring people in from all different places, and so it's much easier to do Zoom. So that's Grass Tops. Media, social media, Patty, anyone that's on that want to speak to anything about social media? No, Patty's shaking her head. No, I don't think Phyllis probably is right now connected on that part either. So we can move on. Okay. Next screen. Deanne's having a problem with these screens.
Sorry, guys. Let's see.
They're locked in on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not sure what the deal is.
Okay. The next screen, actually, I'm going to go on. You figure it out and I'll keep talking.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. The next one is our chapter development, which is a team. The steering committee is on that. The steering committee consists of co-leads of all the different committees and co-liaisons from the lobby team. And our next meeting for the steering committee is January 26th at 9:30. It's on Zoom. Program committee, Kelly, do you have anything you want to say about that?
Just briefly, our next 2 months, so we always meet the third Thursday of the month. February and March will also be Zoom meetings. Next month, we'll hear about the Michigan Homegrown Power Initiative, which is Ed Rivet and Peter Sinclair who will present on that. In March, we'll hear from Todd Wilson from Perfect Circle Recycling. And then starting in April, we'll be back in person for hopefully annual going forward film screening. More details to be kind of shored up with that, but hope to see everyone the next couple months.
Okay, good. Communications committee does the newsletter. That comes out always on the first of the month. And if you're registered as a member, you should be getting that. If there's any problem or not getting that email newsletter, please put that in the chat. And Deanne, who is working our screens, Dennis and Julia are the ones who put out that newsletter every month. And anyone who is interested in writing and being a part of that newsletter committee, also indicate that in the chat. Appreciate that. Next one is the treasurer. John, any comment at all?
Our finances are solid. We have some money from grants for people going to training sessions, and we have some money for chapter expenses. We are self-funding. Please donate if you wish, or if particular program you want to support, let's do it. It's funded on an ad hoc basis to the present time, so we don't normally ask for money. Feel free to do so.
Okay, thank you. And then we also, in the last part of it, we listed the GVSU chapter, and the numbers are, some of them are graduating. They haven't sent me the new list yet of people that they have in their chapter. They fortunately get to join directly now because of the official chapter with CCL on a national basis, as several other university chapters that are in existence, like MSU and University of Michigan. So, sorry. Okay, next scene.
That's
So,
my screen.
yes, that's your screen. You're on.
Okay. So I think we saw a lot of people at the annual meeting that are in this meeting this evening. But just to recap, I think it was a great meeting. Thanks to everyone that was able to join us and David's stellar leadership along with Mindy. I think it was we had great participation. We couldn't have asked for better. We got our goal was to create action plans for 2026, and every committee was able to do that on the timing that we provided. We had 28 people attend. All committees were able to present their past work, highlights, challenges, and potential opportunities. And then in small groups, each committee, people chose which committee they would have the most energy for or wanted to provide feedback to. They did that and then created the action plans. We shared them out. I think it's fair to say from all the feedback that we got that it was a sense of accomplishment and direction for 2026.
Yes, it was.
Jan, David, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I can just say that the kind of feedback that I had from people that was from their first experience with CCL and as our chapter, and to be in a group of people highly motivated, really focused on doing something. They said it was just touching to see so many people together talking about important things and really communicating and collaborating. And that was kind of a thrill to hear that. So good.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just want to say that Rebecca, you were also stellar. Thank you for all of your efforts to
Yeah.
organize this thing. It was great. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
It was a great team effort.
Okay, Climate Action Program is also called CAP. It falls under the lobby team, but they always have special things to talk about and what's happening on a national basis. So Rebecca and Chuck, you take over.
Yeah, so this slide shows the actions, and I put them for the entire year. I thought this would be a good month to do that. The first 4 months or so were from the split. I combined the split Grand Haven and Grand Rapids. And then following that, it's just the greater Grand Rapids numbers. The action order is in, it's ordered by the number of actions taken. The NOAA and NASA is by far the greatest one. And in fact, the month of February, when that was the main action to take, there were 179 alone. And that by far was the greatest month that we worked. As you see, there are 72 members participated, which is really good, I think. I was curious, so I dug down in deeper, and there were 21 members that had 10 or more contacts made to their members of Congress. So for a total of 506, that's over 40 a month average. So
It's
not
good.
bad.
Not bad.
That's great. Yep, not bad.
And we always like to say, if you're going to do, if you have no time to do anything, this is the action you take, and it really does count. People don't realize that it counts, but it does. So go
Yeah.
ahead. Next.
Yeah, so thanks, Chuck. I love seeing those numbers. The action for the current action is regarding NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and in terms of the upcoming spending bill, some specific that includes is wildfire behavior analysis is something we're trying to protect and actually gain more funding for, flood forecasting, and aviation safety. Those were just a few of the detailed items, but do it today. Next slide. It is super easy. In case, as a reminder, or if you're new to this, the website makes it easy. You also get emails. Search for CCL Action or Brett Cease. He sent an email, I think, 2-3 days ago regarding this. And once you get to the website, it's very easy to follow the links. Everything is pre-proliferated for you in terms of your representatives. You just have to put in your address, and they proliferate that for you. They have come up with draft letters that you can customize. It makes it very simple. And like Chuck said, the numbers really do make a difference.
Okay, thank you. All right, these are quick announcements. We're running out of time here, but West Michigan Environmental Hub, which you have a link in the chat about if you want to know more about it. Coming up, Kelly's already announced this, the February program on the 19th will be the same time that we'll start, and it's same setup. Ed Rivet and Peter Sinclair, both men who are very well known in this state. And they started the organization Homegrown Power. And that is about doing alternative energy programs, wind and solar across the state, and working with farmers and townships and all sorts of levels. And they'll be speaking on the success that they've had within Michigan. So this is going to be good information. So next one, listening to the recording of the January CCL National Monthly Call. This is every month on the second Saturday. You can find it on the national website of citizensclimatelabbie.org. And this time it was stepping into 2026, very much like what our meeting was last Sunday, organization updates and putting Bridge into action. And we have a new confirmed CEO, Ricky Bradley. He's there telling us what direction and where we're going on at the national level. And because most people kind of are shying away from really looking at national action, this is a good way to really connect and know some really positive things that CCL is doing at the national level. So I encourage you to do so. West Michigan Business Forum, that's coming up. It's actually now Michigan. Oops, is this the same one? No, this is different. Okay, I'm going to skip that one. Number 5 is proposed additions to Michigan's invasive plant list. This is an action happen at the state level that's really important. You'll see the link in the chat on that, and also a link to the Michigan Business. It's really Michigan Sustainable Business Forum. There's a word missing there. So both are links of things that are coming up that are both Zoom, and this one on number 5 is, of course, an action. So, and these kinds of announcements are always depending on how prompt they are from the standpoint of the actual month and timing, will be out on the first of the month by the newsletter that comes out in your email. So look for these. These are actions. These are things to pay attention to that you can do something, both at local, state, and national level. So, okay. All right. I'm going to let David take over now. Thank you very much for all the reporting you guys did and keeping us informed on what's happening. And David, you're on.
Thank you. I'm very happy to introduce Robert Cloy. Many of you have met him already. He was subject of an interview that we did this past year. And I just read the introduction and then he can take it from there. He is the Climate and Environmental Justice Specialist at the Grand Rapids Office of Sustainability, who will be giving us an overview of the Grand Rapids Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, which they call CAP, C-A-A-P. Robert specializes in reconnecting communities to their natural environment. He received his BS in Natural Resources Management from Grand Valley in 2018 and has held various environmental management positions in the Grand Rapids area. In addition to his professional experience at Friends of Parks, Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and ELGRO, Robert is a certified arborist and sits on several environmentally themed committees for the City of Grand Rapids, Grand River Network, and the Michigan Forest Association. And without further ado, I hand it over to Robert. Thank you, Robert, for being with us today.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll kind of start with a little introduction about myself. I like I said, I really appreciate that David, yeah, like it, doing the interview with yourself, it was a great opportunity. I'm really glad that I was kind of able to do that. But so yeah, I am the environmental and climate justice specialist here at the city started in early August. Prior to my time here, I spent about 2.5 years at the Grand Valley Metro Council. They had an environmental programs department called ELGRO, which was a watershed council. And kind of like David said before that, had spent time at Friends of GR Parks, and then went to Grand Valley State University. Go Lakers! Are there any alumni here? Not sure. But yeah, today I really just wanted to kind of talk to you, do a little overview of the climate action and adaptation plan, kind of give a little bit of background. I'm sure some of you or most of you have had some experience, with the 2, 3, almost 4 year outreach process that the CAP kind of went through before the adoption by the city. But we'll start pretty high level with the CAP, and then kind of get into a bit more specifically of what our office is doing, as well as my specific work. And then we will kind of talk about next steps and how we kind of see community being involved in all of this. So, and then at the end, our outreach and our education and engagement coordinator, Kat Hart, has created some really wonderful public facing resources that I would love to share with all of you. Kind of really explaining how each one of you individually and collectively can kind of take climate action. So a little bit of background about the actual climate action and adaptation plan, or CAP, as I will probably be using for a shorthand going forward. The CAP was officially adopted by the City of Grand Rapids Commission on August 12th, 2025. This, again, like I said, was after a multi-year process of the office, as well as other departments, as well as community members, all kind of working together to kind of figure out what is it that we as a city and as a community, what do we want to see as far as how we are going to tackle a changing climate going forward together. So the CAP, it's a giant document full with strategies and different actions and goals. But the base of it is that when the city was doing this process, they were able to work with a contractor called ICLEI, and in doing so, they were able to come up with this climate risk and vulnerability assessment, which is a separate document from the CAP. I'm happy after my presentation to throw some links in the chat, and that can be one of them. It is up on our website, but it basically is another document that kind of shows what the biggest climate risks are in Grand Rapids specifically, and what populations, what communities are the most vulnerable along with those climate risks. And so that, in tandem with all the other community work that the city was able to do, as well as leaning on guidance from the Paris Accords and really just trying to be as scientific as possible, this CAP kind of outlines a 62.8% per capita greenhouse gas reduction community-wide by the year 2030, using 2019 emissions as a baseline. 2019 was chosen, it was a year right before COVID. It is the most it's a very nice standard to use before kind of things started changing around. And then the other goal is 100% per capita greenhouse gas reduction by 2050, again, using that 2019 emissions as a baseline. So 62.8% per capita greenhouse gas reduction in the next 4 years is a lofty goal, to say the least, but it's something that I know, and that I know that the team, when they were coming up with these goals, wanting to set that as a standard, as something to strive towards, and having having this big goal, having this reachable. It is a reachable goal, but it will take all of us. It will take resources, funding, investment, almost a paradigm shift in the way that we as a city are thinking, the way that we as community, as individuals are thinking, how we are each collectively going to play a part in reducing these greenhouse gas emissions. So to this point, the city of Grand Rapids, in addition to conducting a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, which is going to come in I'll kind of talk about that a bit later. But basically, we have the city came up with this model that showed that only less than 3% of the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted by the Grand Rapids area are coming from municipal or government operations. Basically, what that means is even with the city passing this plan, 98% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the public, are coming from community. The city can only do so much specifically to change the way that they are that they're investing in different infrastructure, or they're investing in different strategies to reduce municipal greenhouse gas emissions. Almost all of it is going to have to come from community. That doesn't mean that the city doesn't have a role to play in that. The city really wants to act as a leader by kind of modeling how we as a city are going to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions from our transportation, our fleet, our buildings, our energy usage, and hoping that community can then take that knowledge and those lessons learned and apply it, community-wide. Implementing actions that are under our local control. A good example is land use and how we as a city are planning going forward. Just being very intentional about understanding that as we move forward into this new age, that a changing climate and the ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions has to be on the forefront of all planning processes going forward. Acting as a convener for community stakeholders. So really offering spaces, offering expertise, staff, resources when they are available, so that community can then have that ability to actually reduce those GHG emissions. And then a big part, I think, of what the city has been doing and is going to continue to do and will continue to be a leader in is the policy work, both here at the city, but then also advocating at the state level as well. On the federal level, we want to make sure that we are, leading by example and showing both state and the federal administration that this is a new way forward. And honestly, if we as a city and we as a society cannot move towards this new age, this new way of thinking, we're leaving meat on the bone. This is an amazing opportunity not only for the health of the planet, but then also for the health of communities by investing in these new strategies, these new ways of thinking that will, again, kind of help out. So advocating for policy, both at the state and federal level, are something that the city is going to continue to play an active part in. Like I kind of mentioned a bit earlier, so this CAP process, even I want to say even before 2023 started, but 2023 to 2025 was the actual engagement process of the CAP. Going out into community, talking with over 1,600 people, getting their input, offering expertise again from staff going out. But then I think a really cool thing that the city did, and I can speak personally to this, before I came aboard the city when I was still at GVMC, this office approached me about teaching, being a subject expert matter in the nature-based solutions chapter. I was able to go out, I think it's actually this top picture here, and I was able to lead a session with community members talking about the very early draft of the nature-based solutions chapter, and doing tabling activities, getting feedback from the residents who were able to show up. And so I just thought that was really special, a really intentional way that the city and the office went out into community, trying to make sure that this wasn't just something that the city was doing towards the people, right? But making sure that that community were able to co-create this plan in tandem with the city. So that was a big one. Another overlapping thing that that the CAP has is that it worked pretty closely with the community master plan. So out of all the actions that I'll kind of get into a bit later, and all the strategies, there are 54 strategies and actions that overlap with both the CAP and the community master plan. Again, just showing that this isn't just a standalone document, that this is something that the city is serious about, that they want to integrate into, all of their processes and policy going forward. And yeah, just making sure that there's communication between departments as we kind of move forward with all these different actions in both the community master plan and the climate action and adaptation plan. Okay, so now the actual CAP. So the vision for the climate action and adaptation plan is that Grand Rapids will be a resilient, low carbon city that centers equity in climate solutions to ensure a safe and healthy community. So the CAP is broken into 6 different chapters. Those chapters being energy systems, residential homes, buildings and industry, transportation, nature-based solutions, and food systems. And each one of those chapters has they were defined by the initial greenhouse gas inventory, and it kind of shows who and what are the largest emitters of each one of those chapters. I'll say that in my role as an environmental and climate justice specialist, out of these 6 chapters, I am responsible for 3 of them. So transportation, nature-based solutions, and food systems are all under my purview. We have a building specialist, Jen Spiller, who has been at the city for a good number of years. I'm sure hopefully you've all had a chance to interact with her. She's an amazing person. Kevin Green, who just came on in the last year, is our carbon specialist and really kind of works all throughout these chapters, but especially in the energy systems. And then I mentioned Kat Hart, our education and engagement coordinator, who again has work and has a role in making sure that the public has access and understanding and awareness of all of these different chapters as well. So how the chapters are kind of broken down is that, each one of those chapters is broken down into a specific goal. Underneath that goal, there is a strategy, and underneath those strategies are the 197 different actions throughout the plan. I want to say each chapter has between 30 and 35-ish actions, a bit more, a bit less in some of them, but really, what this shows is that, for example, Ann Arbor, they just passed, a couple years ago, they passed their version of a climate action and adaptation plan, and their whole thing has 44 actions in it. So, there is good and bad with having such an extensive list. We're definitely trying to reach all corners, of the community with each of these actions. But on the other hand, someone sees 197 actions that the city, is behind, is trying to implement, is trying to get community to implement. It can be a little daunting. And so, that's why it's kind of helpful looking at the strategies and the goals. If that 197 gets a bit much, although they're all very every single one of those actions again is rooted in science, is rooted in that outreach and engagement that came prior to that. So there's no filler, I guess I'll say, in any of those actions. They all have a part to play in making sure that we're reaching that 62.8% by 2030 and 100% greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2050. Another thing that the CAP has is it has these different themes, these kind of cross-sector intersectionality ideas is that, not one of these actions, not one of these strategies are, in a vacuum in and of itself. And so a lot of these different actions, they cut across health, public health, community health, individual health, the idea of resilience, making sure that we're focusing on equity with all these different actions, the collaboration side of it. Again, I think the city and this office and community have kind of shown that, we are all in this to collaborate together. And then I want to leave economic prosperity for last because I feel like, in my understanding of sustainability and just in the 8 or so years since leaving college, I feel like sometimes community I guess community feedback on sustainability is that it's not economically viable, or that it's we're going to spend more money than we're going to make. And I'll say, kind of to my point earlier about this paradigm shift and leaning into this idea of sustainability and clean energy and protecting our environment. As much as I would want to protect our environment for the sake of protecting our environment, there is a massive economic gain from investing in these sustainable actions. This idea of having green jobs. If me personally, just thinking about what's the economy, what's the job market of the future going to look like? I'm big on trades. I think it's an option that every single person should have. Kind of leaving high school before they kind of making that decision. This idea of making clean energy, making sustainable, making those trades, making those just having the ability for our young people to kind of choose a different path and going into these things. So all that to say, there is money to be made in investing in sustainability. Okay, so just a little bit of background. So the city adopted the cap in August. There was a multi-month process of this cap going to commission, commission giving feedback to the Office of Sustainability, the office kind of doing the work that the commission was requesting, giving it back. It's a very iterative process. So once the commission actually formally adopted the entirety of the cap, they did kind of go through. They held a workshop, I think I want to say a month or two or 2 months before the official adoption, and they kind of came up with these specific, okay, like I said, like the cap has these 197 actions, but this is what commission wants to prioritize. And so they kind of came up with these 20 actions that they say, these are what we want this is what we want the Office of Sustainability and Community to kind of focus on as a priority. Not to say that, the 177 other actions aren't being done or aren't being, prioritized or aren't being thought about. But from a city commission point of view, this big document, wanting to just make sure that this wasn't just another document that was being, created and then not being implemented. And so I think these 20 commission priorities kind of almost give us some teeth. They really gave our office an immediate workload, something to focus on, something to do. So I'm going to go through these commission priorities pretty quickly. I'm happy again to answer any questions at the end about any of these. But so in the energy systems, some of the commission priorities, some of these that the city is already doing, that the Office of Sustainability is already doing. Some of them, are kind of just easier to implement than the other 30 plus actions in the energy systems. But the first one, Energy Systems Strategy 1, Action 2, is partnering with energy utilities that serve the community, such as Consumers Energy, DTE Energy, and Vicinity Energy, which is our STEAM district downtown. Doing all that to enhance access to, as well as awareness and understanding of what their existing services are, and how that can comply with renewable and clean energy, as well as other climate-related commitments. Energy Systems Strategy 2, Action 2, is again continuing to advocate for federal and state legislation to make sure that the federal and state government keeps sustainability, climate-focused energy systems kind of at the forefront of planning and thinking, and making sure that bills are being included that support that a more of privately owned community solar, as well as, again, investing in sustainability for the purpose of trying to generate wealth for for communities, that job, that economic way of thinking. The other two commission priorities in energy systems were Energy Systems Strategy 3, Action 4. So making sure that we are leveraging all available funding sources, but then also including local green banks, on-bill financing, and as well as expanding access to low and no-cost financing for on-site renewable energy and low to no emissions energy technology. Geothermal, solar panels, everything that kind of falls into that bucket. And then the last commission priority for the energy system chapter was identifying and supporting active community hubs to transition to make sure that those community hubs can transition to resilience hubs, making sure that we're prioritizing NOFs. So NOFs are neighborhoods of focus. There was a study done by the city that showed that we have these about 17 census tracts throughout the city, most of them on the southeast, southwest side, that with any socioeconomic indicator, you would say that those areas are disadvantaged. I don't have this map included in this slide, but I'm happy to send it. It's a really interesting map. In the cap, there is a map of the when Grand Rapids was red lines. I don't want to say the exact date. I don't want to get it wrong, but back in the 1940s, 1950s, when the federal government came into Grand Rapids and basically showed that there were certain areas in the city that were not worth investing in. Well, their protocol, their idea for not investing in those areas mainly meant that those areas were full of people of color. And so you fast forward a couple of decades to now, and you can literally overlap that map of neighborhoods and census tracts that were red lines, deemed not worthy of investment. And you can overlay that with a map of current socioeconomic factors, and you will see that those same areas, decades later, because they never received that investment, that other areas, predominantly white and affluent at the time, since they did not receive that investment, they are still to this day struggling. So just wanted to kind of point out that, so the neighborhoods of focus, these are, intentional areas that the city has identified to make sure to try to remedy some of those decisions and choices of the past government, past administrations, making sure going forward that we are aware of that and that we're being as equitable as possible by putting those areas at the forefront, at the very center of providing resources, again, just to try to remedy what decisions were made kind of decades ago. So this idea of activating community hubs and kind of transitioning them into resilience hubs, again, that climate and risk assessment that was done, it laid out all of the different climate risk that Grand Rapids was going to have, basically, in the future, as the climate continues to change. Grand Rapids specifically, it's going to get hotter. There's going to be more precipitation, and we're going to have more extreme events. And so making sure that those areas, those neighborhoods of focus that are already facing these socioeconomic issues that will then also be facing these climate risk issues, that they have somewhere in their community that they can go, that can offer resilience, that can offer different kind of resources to kind of help shield them from some of these climate risks that are coming. Okay, second chapter, residential homes. These commission priorities. Resilient homes, our residential homes strategy 3, action 3 is exploring the feasibility of innovative financing, such as creating a green revolving fund a green cost share program, different types of on-bill financing, and really just any other sustainable public financing programs that are going to help community members finance these home energy retrofits, these updates, while also investing in serving additional households. So a big thing I'll say is that, when we talk about, what do we as a community, what type of resources, what kind of funding do we have to have? Grand Rapids has a very old housing stock. To make sure that we're actually reducing those greenhouse gas emissions, many of those buildings, many of those residential and commercial buildings aren't necessarily they don't have the bones, they don't have the structure to kind of be efficient, to be energy efficient. And so that cost, that upfront cost, can be a real burden to a community. And so making sure that we as a city are just kind of looking at what are all the public funding and public financing options that we can offer to a community to kind of lessen that burden of paying that upfront cost of making our buildings more energy efficient. So residential homes strategy 5, action 2 is assessing and reducing barriers to innovative housing solutions. We all know that, we as Grand Rapids and as a nation are facing a housing crisis. And so just making sure that we're being, again, as intentional and innovative as possible when we think about how are we doing new construction, again, how are we retrofitting buildings, but then also encouraging manufacturers to meet with our city's planning department, who does a really great job to discuss what are the design standards at the front end of a project. And so really just trying to get that energy efficiency with any new construction, trying to get that kind of started up front. Again, so, it's not necessarily a burden that in a couple of decades, the community is going to have to face because our new development wasn't made as energy as efficient as possible. Residential homes strategy 5, action 3, exploring different tools and strategies for protecting residents at risk of displacement. One thing I've kind of heard, again, in just the sustainability realm is that, community residents sometimes fear the idea of energy efficiency, of sustainability, of clean energy, because to them that means a governmental entity, a power that be going into their community, making it nicer, but not necessarily for them, right? And so, we've seen this idea of where currently as Grand Rapids are facing, again, nationwide, this idea of going into an area that was, had disinvestment for decades, and now we want to go in, we want to help, we want to clean it up, we want to offer all these resources. The problem is that, again, not necessarily community members not necessarily feeling that like those updates are for them. And so you also talk about investing in areas and then raising taxes, raising property taxes. So just making sure that as we continue to try and think about how we're going to make our residential homes more energy efficient, that we're doing that for the people that are currently living in those homes and not for, whoever may come after, or whoever, we may want to live in those areas. But again, making sure that the people who are there, who are facing those burdens, are receiving those investments for them, for that community. And I actually just pause real quick. I'm seeing some chat. I can't check every chat, so maybe at the end, maybe David, I don't know if you guys are throwing questions in there, but maybe I can answer them at the end.
Yeah, I think John is monitoring the chat, and he'll.
Okay.
Yeah, and the chat is actually self-policing nicely at present. Continue your conversations.
Perfect. No, keep going. Keep going. Okay. Okay, so buildings and industry, these commission priorities, I'll kind of go through these a little faster. So really enhancing access to and the use of data, energy cost, emissions, how much greenhouse gas emissions our buildings are actually producing, partnering with utilities to improve streamlined access to this data, educating and supporting businesses and organizations. There are many different free resources out there, one of them being the US EPA Energy Star Portfolio Manager Program. And so, just letting buildings and commercial users know that there are these resources out there that, if you're to simplify, if you're keeping track of your data, you're knowing, how much energy you're using, more than likely you will be able to then save money by investing in some type of resource that is going to help reduce that energy burden. So that's kind of all this is about, is keeping track of your energy usage, and then making sure that data is being used appropriately. And then same one with buildings and industry strategy one is educating building stakeholders on the different services that are available. And in doing so, helping to evaluate what is the actual performance of those buildings and improvements. Again, including what is your return on investment if you're making your building or industry more energy efficient. What are the avoided costs? Again, if you're keeping track of your energy, you know, and you're making these investments, you're knowing that by making this investment, I'm actually going to be saving money kind of in the long term. And again, just keeping track of our energy for the sake of knowing how much greenhouse gas we're emitting and how much can be reduced in that particular building or industry. Buildings and industry strategy 4, action 3. So again, partnering with Vicinity Energy, making sure that we are continuing to implement efficiency projects, as well as pursuing electrification of steam generation, as well as just sourcing renewable energy as a strategy to reduce those emissions. So I don't know if any of you have, I'm not an expert on, this isn't my chapter, I'm not an expert on Vicinity Energy, but I will say when I first started, I was able to do a tour of the building downtown that kind of houses Vicinity Energy and got a walkthrough of the steam district and just got to know a little bit of ins and outs. I believe they are open to doing tours. I'm not necessarily sure to individuals, but I definitely think that if a group like yourself approach them and wanting to do a tour of that building, if you haven't already, it would really just be a great opportunity to kind of see just this different, very unique, actually, the fact that Grand Rapids has a steam district still powering some of our buildings downtown. I was able to learn a lot, and I think that all the work that this group is doing, I think it would be a benefit as well. Okay, now we get to my chapters, my expertise. So transportation. So transportation strategy 3, action 2. It's all about bike lanes. Making sure that we are not just installing new bike lanes, but that we're making those as accessible and as user-friendly as possible by making sure that we are offering some sort of protection, making sure that we're looking at the city, this idea of transportation being one of our biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, is that the whole idea is that we want to kind of move away from this idea of one person per car, taking kind of all these trips. And so the idea of making the city more walkable, more bikeable, investing in better resources for mass transit, buses, trains, but then also investing in EV infrastructure to make sure that those of us who do want to purchase electric vehicles, that there is actually resources and infrastructure in our city to again increase the accessibility. I'm a biker myself. I wish I biked more, but all of my friends, they are avid bikers, and I can't tell you, even from them, even just from the public, how many times I've kind of heard, when are we installing more bike lanes? When are we installing protected bike lanes? And so, this really is a big piece. I'm really happy personally that the commission wanted to prioritize installing bike lanes. I know that this is something that the public has been going to commission for years now and kind of asking for the city to invest in. So, something that the city has heard and I think is going to continue to invest in that. And so, yeah, so transportation strategy 2, action 5 is again just adding new pedestrian amenities, really trying to focus on accessibility. So that is both partnering with our transit system, the Rapid, to make sure that we are increasing bus stop amenities, but then also just this idea of exploring as we think about, how do we want to shift behavior in a way that is less car centric and more, again, bikeability, walkability. And so just exploring this idea of a pilot kind of program of what if we made one pedestrian only street downtown. And I know, there have been moments, throughout the year where there are festivals or fairs or anything, where that, a certain section of the road is kind of closed off and it's for walking only, and I think this is something that the city is just, how can we explore this idea and make this a more permanent kind of resource. And I will say to this first part, so partnering with the Rapid to increase bus stop amenities, our office just in the past month, we applied for a MSU practicum, basically a capstone for their urban planning course that they offer every year. Luckily, we were approved, and pardon me. And yesterday was the initial meeting. So I drove to MSU yesterday and I met with the cohort of students that will be working with us for the next 4 months. It's a group of 12 MSU urban planning students. And specifically, the proposal that we put in that got accepted was we want those students in the next 4 months to do additional assessment and additional analysis on the bus stops that are here in the city, specifically, again, prioritizing bus stops that are in neighborhoods of focus and basically doing like a shade coverage analysis. So does each bus stop, does it have a physical infrastructure that's protecting from both shade and other weather? Does it have a building nearby that is offering that shade, and or does it have any sort of tree canopy that is next to that bus stop that's again offering some type of shade? And again, that's just if we one thing that we've heard about, people, many things that we've heard, about the reasons, the lack of people using the buses. Part of it is just that creature comfort and not having a waiting location that is as comfortable as just jumping in your car and and kind of going about your business. And so really, again, just trying to provide additional data and analysis to show that this is where we need to be investing. If we make our bus stops easier and more comfortable, hopefully that's going to lead to some sort of behavior change and really just allowing more people to feel comfortable using those using our Rapid, using our bus system. Transportation strategy 6, action 4 is expanding and promoting the DART EV car share pilot program. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to rent out our DART electric vehicle, but I believe this was a pilot that was run for the previous 2 years. This was through our mobile GR department, which is a city department really focused on mobility, parking, and just this idea of micro mobility. So our Lime scooter systems and this DART EV car share. A little bit about this program is that you can rent this electric vehicle for, I want to say it's $5 an hour, up to, I want to say 300 miles. And then I think you pay, a certain amount of cents per mile after that. But I have a couple of friends who don't have cars, and this is their main way of getting around the city. Like they rent this car out anytime they need to go someplace that a bus necessarily can't, or might be a little too far. I believe the initial, I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe the initial amount of cars that Mobile GR had was 6, and they have since expanded that number, and they will be again increasing that number. I think the full number is 12. 12 EV cars that anybody in the community is able to rent out and again, kind of go about their business. So again, it's not necessarily sorry. So it's not necessarily reducing the single car occupancy, but because this is electric vehicle, we're reducing the amount of greenhouse gas emissions coming from that diesel powered cars that most of us kind of have. So again, amazing program. I would check out Mobile GR Dart EV car share program if you want to learn any more. So are the commission priorities in the nature-based systems again are so kind of prioritizing neighborhoods that have a low tree equity score, neighborhoods that have that low canopy, as well as neighborhoods that are at a higher risk of urban heat island effect, outdoor air pollution, and doing all this by doing more tree planting and habitat restoration. You guys kind of mentioned it earlier today, this idea of a pocket forest. I think we all kind of know the benefits of having trees, cleaner air, cleaner water, aesthetic beauty, refuge, their habitats for wildlife, providing that shade. So again, this idea of prioritizing neighborhoods that have a low tree equity score, this low tree equity score, again, if you look at that map of neighborhoods of focus, that map of areas in our city that were redlined, most of those neighborhoods have a very low tree canopy percentage. The citywide, I want to say our canopy cover is at 36%. The city a couple years ago made it a goal to reach 40% canopy coverage. That's kind of industry standard across the nation. But again, that 36% average is not kind of distributed equitably across the city. There are neighborhoods that have about 10% tree canopy, 15% tree canopy. And those are neighborhoods that, sorry, one second, really just making sure that we're being intentional about going to these neighborhoods that don't have a lot of tree coverage, and making sure that we are installing those trees. A great contractor that the city works with is Friends of GR Parks, who do a lot of volunteer opportunities, a lot of tree planting, and they do a lot of contract work with the city, actually installing those trees. The city's forestry department, a lot of their role is focused on maintenance of already existing trees, which is, again, critically important, but then also making sure that we're installing new trees kind of for generations to come. The second priority in nature-based systems is this idea of kind of getting rid of just the modern turf lawn. So making sure that we're pursuing an update to our zoning ordinance to include native and native adapted plantings. Doing this in a couple of different ways. One of them is adopting a landscape manual. And this basically would just kind of show that or allow residents to plant, more than just turf grass, in their front yards. Right now, I want to say the city code is, any plant above, I want to say 12 inches above a foot is actually considered a nuisance. And native plants, many of them get above that kind of foot. And so there is just some this I guess idea of, okay, we as residents want to install different native plants in our front yards, but then we can be cited by the city, by our neighbors, by keeping these kind of these taller plants. And so again, just the idea of using native plants, it is better than turf grass as far as stormwater retention, again, providing habitat for those pollinators. And so again, just the city trying to make it easier, trying to reduce a barrier for residents to actually use native plants in their front yard. And then another thing that this priority doesn't mention, but the city is doing a really great job at also integrating native plants and green infrastructure in their different construction projects. And so, this is a community goal to use more native plants, but this is also a municipal operation goal to make sure that we're using native plants when appropriate. Okay, so food systems. The ideas, really the whole idea about these priorities is we just want to make it easier for residents to engage in the food system, whether that is growing local food, having access to different waste stream services, so composting. And so the first one, strategy one, action one, the city wants to adopt the recommendations of the Urban Ag Committee that will reduce barriers in our city code to make it easier to install greenhouses and hoop houses within the city limits. So right now, greenhouses and hoop houses are classified as what we call an accessory structure. And if you want to install, if you want to go through the process and legally, install a greenhouse and or a hoop house, that accessory structure permit is not very conducive of a greenhouse or hoop house. It's very technical, and it's just not the appropriate permit for something like a greenhouse or a hoop house. And so just the city is going through a zoning a ordinance update right now. I believe that is, again, one of their big priorities, is just making sure that if you want to install these, food system-based infrastructure, that there is a specific permit for that, again, just to kind of reduce that barrier and make it easier for community to install that. Strategy 2, Action 9, so pursuing a pilot program to utilize food scrap, mulch, and wood waste in the creation of a compost soil as well as biochar. I will say, this is something that other municipalities around us have done. They have they've had a pilot kind of community compost program. I know there are some private services here in the city, Organicycle, Wormies. There's a smaller one just called Grand Rapids Compost. A lot of those offer, curbside pickup, or leave your bin outside of your door, your bucket, and they'll come grab it. This is the idea of, okay, the city wants to now take a bigger step in the ability for residents and community members to compost. And what is it that we can kind of do as a city to make it easier? What kind of infrastructure can we provide? I will say internally, we at our office have been working with a couple different departments, kind of teasing out what this idea would look like. What's the idea of a community compost program? There's been some good work on that. So just kind of want to leave it at that. I don't want to get too much into that. But our strategy 3, action 1, again, is just reviewing our ordinance language, making it easier to reduce barriers to compost. If you look at our city, Immunicode, we do have a section on composting, and it's slightly restrictive. I've had the, I guess, ability to read through a couple, what this strategy 3, action 1 is about. And again, strategy 3, action 4 is, again, just kind of making it increasing the community's access to composting services. A lot of this will involve the city going out into community, educating, but then again, getting feedback from the community on kind of what they want to see as far as how they want to be able to compost, and what kind of drop-off systems or services can the city provide for that. And then the last one, strategy 4, action 1, again, is pursuing recommendations of our Urban Ag Committee to reduce barriers to backyard livestock, edible trees, and shrubs. I will say, so the Urban Ag Committee is it's a city-led kind of resident-based volunteer committee. Anybody is able to apply to be on, I want to say there are 40 or so committees throughout the city that everyday residents are able to apply for. And then beyond, our Urban Ag Committee was formed, I want to say 2017. And from 2017 until 2022, their main job was to look at other municipalities and kind of basically looking at all the ways that other municipalities treated their food systems and what was allowed. And at the beginning of 2022, the Urban Ag Committee formally submitted those recommendations to the city for adoption. I want off the top of my head, I can't. There are 7 recommendations. Some of them had to do again with greenhouses, composting, bee and chicken permits. And out of all of those recommendations, a handful were actually passed into city ordinances. So the code was changed. 2 of those being we now have an actual bee keeping permit. And then the chicken permit, which was, it was always there. Residents are technically allowed to have chickens. But the previous permit was again very limiting, and there was just some great research and background information that the Urban Ag Committee was able to give the city, who then went back into the code and kind of made that permit and ability to keep chickens a bit less restrictive. So, so this last priority is just looking at some of these other recommendations that the Urban Ag Committee gave and kind of adding them again when appropriate into the city code. So yeah, so that was a lot. I went through 20 of the 197 actions. So again, like those 20 that commission prioritized, a lot of those are things that the city again is already doing, or is very close to getting started on. And so the 177 actions that come after that, for the past, since the cap was adopted in August, our office has been working with internally as well as with a contractor, just trying to get additional analysis. Now that we have the cap passed, what type of information can we now glean from that document to kind of make it easier to present to both community and commission as we continue moving forward with the implementation of this cap. And so some of that additional analysis is just going to include, what's the specific greenhouse gas reduction potential for each of those actions. How are we going to prioritize the strategies and actions, short, medium, and long term? I think in the beginning I said, 98% of greenhouse gas emissions come from community. And so what can we, who are the responsible parties out in the community, that we can walk alongside that are already doing a lot of this work, and how can we collaborate on making sure that we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions as at the most efficient and rate as possible. And then part of my job will be creating an online accountability hub, basically a dashboard that shows all of the different metrics that will be public facing. And so anyone in the community is then able to will be able to go onto that dashboard, kind of see where the city is at with each one of those actions, and just a good amount of other information about that as well. And then as far as implementation, again, like we're already kind of working on those 20 prioritized actions here in the short term. Our engagement and our education engagement coordinator, Kat Hart, is providing a bunch of different resources for community to kind of get involved with the cap, but then also all these other kind of climate activities that we're hoping to see community do and continue to do as well. So I feel like I'm butting up against time, but one of these is the residential climate action checklist. Again, I'm happy to kind of throw this in the chat, but this is something that our Kat was able to make. It's just a very nice public-facing guide that kind of shows you with each one of the chapters what you can kind of do specifically, individually, to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but then also, what you can kind of do to play your part in a changing climate. And then just some more resources. There's some great, really amazing local climate action groups. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Citizens Climate Lobby, the Grand Rapids chapter, but they do some great work. But C4, WEMIAC, you guys had mentioned Michigan Sustainable Business Forum at the beginning, Elgrow, Friends of GR Parks, Plaster Creek Stewards. We as a city, we're not alone in any of this work. All of you have been doing this work, and we will continue to lean on each other, I think, as we kind of move forward and reduce these greenhouse gas emissions. And that is it. Sorry, I feel like I was dragging on those priorities a bit, but really just want to, kind of focus in on those just to show, that the city is serious about this plan and does want to make sure that we're prioritizing the immediate things that can be fixed, as well as just kind of looking medium and long term on what we're going to do with this big plan. So that's all I got. Oh,
Robert, that was great. That was good. David, do you want to say something? Go ahead.
Oh, I just, you can say it, Jan, but we all really deeply appreciate the work you're doing, Robert, and hope that we can find ways to collaborate and make it easier for all of us to make progress.
So, John, do you have some questions or comments?
Yes, we have more questions than I can ever remember. It might suit people to go to the chat and have a look what's going on there. I'm going to go through a few of them and then see where we go from there. Ned, you put in goals, strategies, action. I think Robert dealt with that. It may be moot. Hollow out in a minute if that's not the case. David asked what is on-bill financing, and Pat answered very efficiently, where you have the utility or the management company billing you on your bill, so you don't have to deal with the financing yourself, and the costs are put up front by someone else. Long note on that. And then, I guess related to this, Ned, you put in fight for upfront costs versus rebates. Rebates prevent the disadvantage from accessing resources. Chip in if you need, Robert, but I think these are pretty well done so far. And then from Vivant, transportation, any mention of aviation or the airport in the cap? Robert?
That I do. So no, seeing as the greenhouse gas inventory that was done was focused solely on the city limits, having the airport, kind of slightly outside, those emissions were not included. I will say though, the West Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, which was a plan put together by GVMC, Grand Valley Metro Council, I believe that they were able to include the GR airport, those emissions in their plan as well, seeing as it's kind of in the greater Kent County area.
Yes,
Yeah, I know they're
only
board.
expanding.
Oh,
Go ahead, Vivant.
Yeah, so because they are only expanding, so they are adding. The airport is, with the greenhouse gas emissions.
They fall under the purview of the county rather than the city, although of course the city uses it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
The Democratic Caucus is looking at the possibility of solar panels out at the airport. There are lots of examples of airports with lots of space which is suitable for solar dual purse. So you would maybe pursue that through the regional metro plan rather than your plan.
The regional planning organization, Grand Valley Metro Council, they conducted some analysis on that.
Okay, and back in transport, Joe Lim is asking, well, okay, you've got the Bolter there. I think it's down by Urban Core a lot of the time downtown. But how do you get to the car to use it? Is an intermediate question, I guess.
David, I'm assuming you kind of have everyone's email. So as I was kind of going through that, I was thinking I can either share the slides or I can go through the slides and kind of put together just a resource list of everything that I mentioned, send that over to you, and then you can pass that along. Because I'll include information on the Dart EV car, kind of all the information, and then every other kind of link that I talked about, I mentioned.
Yeah, that's great. I'll share it with our steering committee and we'll get it to all our members.
Yes, please. If we went through some of the other ones, Michelle, has CAP considered a tram network to replace or complement the bus system?
I do not believe tram has been kind of mentioned anywhere within the CAP and or other city departments.
Yeah, it's a moot point. Kelly, why don't you take your question, because I think there's more below the. I don't think I'll do it justice.
Yeah, Robert, thanks so much for being here with us and sharing. I was just curious, a lot of these seem to involve other city departments, and I'm curious about their sort of level of receptivity in this conversation. Like, obviously, you all, the Office of Sustainability, this is your core focus, but have other departments been receptive in items that will require either their involvement or changes actually being initiated from their areas?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and every department so far, at least in the 6 months that I've kind of been reaching out to them, specifically to my chapters, they've been nothing but receptive. And I know, prior to me joining, Kevin, who is our carbon specialist, he was reaching out to departments to get some, pretty some pretty sensitive data, some pretty sensitive information about, their procedures and kind of how they use their energy. And he said that he's had, nothing but again, receptive staff kind of working alongside him. I will say that part of what we've been doing for the past couple months is I kind of mentioned that responsible parties idea. A lot of that was, we create this spreadsheet that kind of showed, that listed out all the 197 actions. And then our staff, our responsibility was to go through each one of those, kind of brainstorm who we thought community partners would be, but then also brainstorming which department would be lead and which department would be support for each one of those 197 actions. And I'm happy to say the next couple weeks we have 20 some plus meetings coming up with different departments, kind of going over that spreadsheet and getting just a better understanding of, I think it's one thing to kind of reach out to department asking for information and asking for data, but then to reach out to them and to have them be, receptive to the idea of, okay, like we've identified you as, our office has identified you as this lead for this action for our climate action and adaptation plan. Is this something that you consent to? Is this something that you agree with? And so far, they've all been, they've all kind of agreed, and it's been nice. Personally, just kind of working with different departments and getting to know them, but then also, I guess getting their support or their, just understanding that they want to be involved in this as well. I will say, maybe some departments have been easier to work with than others, but I think everyone here at the city, kind of understands we're all part of something larger. And so, there's got to be some sort of collaboration, even on a base level, if we kind of want to make these commission mandated plans a reality. And I think that's a big thing too, is like, we as staff can have our opinions and our thoughts, but the way that the city is our process, everything comes down from commission, and they've adopted this, they've adopted the community master plan, and so it is now our job as staff to kind of see out the vision of the commission. So I would say that's another part of it too.
Good.
Thank you. Phyllis had a question about data centers. Is there a plan to deal with them? Any collaboration with the county or neighboring communities to handle this? And it's an ongoing conversation. You don't have to have an answer, but just a comment.
I was gonna say that's a tough one. How much do I like my job? Data centers. I think it's like we are one office that I think with all of this talk about artificial intelligence and just kind of integrating it into every industry, and I think this is public knowledge. The city recently adopted an AI policy. It's on the webpage, and so here at the Office of Sustainability, of course, we want to speak out against any energy usage that may not necessarily be needed, any resource extraction that may harm community more than it does good. But again, being one department of 5 in a city of 1,800 plus employees, I think our voice kind of gets lost a bit. And I will say, as a city, we I think this is public knowledge as well. One of our commissioners recently, asked, the rest of his commissioners, what can we as a city kind of get ahead of this idea of data centers, and what if company wants to come into the city and kind of install this data center, or build a data center. Can we kind of come up with some proactive language that would I guess not allow that? And I guess I'll just say that, again, that was one voice on the Board of Commissioners, and that conversation did not go far. So I guess I'm trying to say is, it feels like the city isn't necessarily saying no to the idea of data centers, which is, a little, it's tough, kind of tough to hear. But I think, as we've kind of seen locally in Lowell, and there was
James
just
Township.
another public meeting, yep, that a
Gaines
lot of
Township.
it is on community, kind of putting pressure on government, on our municipal operations, and letting them know that this isn't necessarily something that they want to see in their communities. And so yeah, I guess I'll say I'll leave it at that. But
Okay.
it's tough. Data centers are tough, and it's all across Michigan, all across the nation, we're being faced with this this issue, this extractive nature of energy and water and space, agricultural space. And I think it's a real conversation that we're gonna have to continue having. Like, what's the cost of this new technology, and integrating this technology, which on one hand can be extremely helpful, but on the other hand, is it worth the extractive rate that comes with it? So
It's a nuanced question. You don't have to have an answer, but thanks for
Yeah.
forwarding the conversation.
don't quote me on that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was good.
Group houses we dealt with. And Terry says Kent County Environmental Action Team. I'm not sure if you're aware of them. It's a Democratic Caucus Environmental Action Team who are players in this space. And I'm going to take the liberty for my question at the end, which kind of goes with this, which is, you've got a lot of work here. You're a leading organization in the county. Lots of other communities in the metropolitan area in particular who are working at lower speed. How do they emulate the process? How do they slipstream behind you? How does this work on a bigger level, be it the county level, be it a level of individual township? Grand Rapids Township, my area, is struggling to take first steps, whether you've taken many steps. How do you see your demonstration effect, or how do you spread the load?
Well, again, I think it's the city kind of being a leader through action, and they've done the hard part of adopting this plan. Now that we have it, it's can we show not only our community but surrounding communities that leaning into fixing the changing climate is something that is worthwhile. And I think other, even smaller municipalities, smaller, communities around us that, may not have the political or the community will, or even a plan itself. Our plan is one of many plans here in the region. We have the West Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, again, put together by the Grand Valley Metro Council, which covers a 4-county area here in West Michigan. One step above that, Michigan itself, Eagle just passed the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, which again kind of shows how Michigan as a whole, how we're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so I guess to your question, if it's a problem of not necessarily having a plan in place, you know, there are those plans that I kind of listed that community members in those areas and political actors in those areas can kind of look to replicate, and if at the very least not necessarily replicate and make their own plan, but at least lean into those plans, seeing as those kind of talk about these smaller municipalities that don't necessarily might not have the resources. To another point though, is I mentioned this at the beginning, like this cap, a big part of why this was started, a lot of it came internally, but a lot of it came from community, kind of coalescing together, coming to the powers that be and telling them that, they want this resource, they want this plan that's going to help guide their community, kind of into this next phase of I guess of a changing climate. And so these smaller municipalities, these smaller townships, smaller villages, I think a lot of it has to do with the people that are in there. Like if they want to see something like this, it's not necessarily hard to look around and seeing where they can replicate. But again, I think it's just like having the will of the people wanting this to come, to the forefront of their community. So
Okay.
we as a city, we can lead as much as we can, and we can lead by example, and we can, invest and, we can invest in infrastructure and things like that. And hopefully, the Kentwoods, the Wyomings, the Cutlervilles, everything kind of around us, they can look to us for expertise, for help, for resources. But at the end of the day, I think it's those specific areas that have to make the choice of wanting
Sure.
to lead in this direction.
Well, I'm going to take that as where Grand Rapids leads, the rest follow.
Yes.
Well, we're well over time. Is that it, John, in the sense of it?
Questions, I would say questions from the floor if you can stay, Robert. If you
Well,
have to go.
Yeah, I'm free.
We're usually finished at 8 o'clock, and so for people to stay, it's up to you. First of all, I want to say if we're going to have some additional talking, that's fine. But let's certainly our appreciation to you, Robert. You've talked a lot. You've been very comprehensive. I've certainly learned a great deal tonight, and thank you very much for all of what you've presented to us. And it will motivate us in the ways that we can be involved in our different levels of community action and certainly keep things right up at the priorities. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. And I turn that back to you. Appreciate all of you for all the work that you do. And I did throw my email in the chat. Happy to answer any questions via email. Happy to connect you with some of our other, specialists here on the team that might have some better answers to some of those, specific, carbon or buildings or energy questions. But then again, I'm going to create this list of resources, send that over to David, and then hopefully he can get that out to all of you.
So I think that's probably it, unless there was anybody that had something that was really pressing that wanted to be covered. No? Okay.
Robert,
Yeah, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Dan.
Yes.
just
Yeah,
thank you
no,
so
thank
much.
all. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Brilliant.
Robert, you killed it.
Thanks.